It involves my mother, my father, my elder sister Kitty and my younger sister Clary. Our origins are Dutch in that all of us were born in Holland, but ever since we arrived here 21 years ago now, Australia's got a stronger and stronger hold on us all the time. And I think I speak for the whole family now when I say that all of us consider ourselves Australians. Our particular Australian adventure began at Tamarine House.
We like to come to Australia because after the war we thought we liked something else, and we had reports from here, from relations, that it was very nice climate here, and it's very cold in Holland and a bit somber and depressing. So we thought, well, Australia might be a nice country, and having the relations here, that was really an opportunity for us to come here. It was all very nice, and well, we didn't have any preconceived ideas. We really came with an open mind. So the first 3 months were very, very nice. We had a lovely time here with all the birds and the beautiful surroundings here. And well, we liked the animals, all the magpies and the peewees and the kookaburras and all those. And also the large animals, the cows and the horses. They were a bit frightening in the beginning, but we soon got used to that. In the beginning we missed something because it is a whole different life and you have to adjust yourself to that. But after a while you get used to it and you like to fit in with the community, so there is really no choice.
You have to do the fitting in?
We have to do the fitting in for a start, for sure. But after a while, I think when you're here for several years, well, then something of our ideas might rub off to the others.
Remember that we used to go to Bordeaux with a thing like this?
Yeah, something like it. Not quite.
Not quite. But you remember that we used all our attention to stick to the left side of the road?
Yes, we sure did.
Mrs. Breeden, was this really the way you went to Bordeaux in those days?
Yes, it was much like it. Not quite as this, but it was an old Pontiac with a dicky seat. And it was quite fun, really. Quite an experience.
Did the fun continue? Because after 3 months here you had to go out into the great big Australian wide world. How was it, Mr. Breeden? Difficult?
Oh, that was more difficult than being here, of course, but it wasn't too bad. The most difficult things I can remember was to find work. That wasn't too easy at that time. We were in Margate. And you had to travel from there by bus to Sandgate, and from Sandgate by train to Brisbane, and then start your run around and see if you can find a job.
How about English? Was that a problem?
Oh, not really. I think they laughed a bit about us sometimes, but we thought we were marvelous. We knew the language very well. That was our opinion, weren't you?
Well, was it a help having friends and relatives? Because you didn't go to a hostel, you had them to help you.
Yes, well, that is really a big help, because whatever experience you have during the day, you come back to the family, and then if you have your friends, you can always more or less fall back to the things you're used to, the familiar talk, the familiar pleasant surroundings as you had it before. Well, that is then a sort of a boost to your morale to start the next day again.
The things I remember about Holland, mostly when I was about 5 and started school. The trip to school, there was a big long road that I had to travel backwards and forwards every day, very flat on either side, and there were wheat fields and cornflowers there growing amongst the wheat, and turnips on the other side. Also, there are pleasant experiences that I can remember. walking through a wooded forest on a very cold, snowy day, and ending our walk at a log cabin and finishing with pancakes and hot chocolate. Other than that, I remember very little, really. I was just had 1 year at school there, and I can remember my friends I had then and where they lived and what we did. I became interested in herbs in a very indirect way. I took part in a pottery exhibition held by my father and Kitty, my sister. Towards this I contributed a variety of potted plants, amongst others a variety of the more ordinary cooking herbs in the strawberry jars. Once you get interested in herbs, you find you get deeper and deeper into it because there are a variety of plants that have a lot to give. Their fragrance are very uplifting to the spirit. If you come home very tired, all you have to do is go in your garden and hose the scented geraniums, pick a sprig of lavender, and you completely forget all your troubles. They have a variety of uses in cooking. They make the most ordinary dish a gastronomic delight. You can really use your imagination. Then, of course, there's the use they've been put to for centuries is the medicinal side. A lot of people are rather sceptical about this, but I find it rather fascinating, and I'm sure there must be a grain of truth in it somewhere. Apart from the herbs, I'm also become very interested in our own Australian native plants here. You find they grow very well and need very little looking after once they're established, and I think more and more Australians are realising this too and using them in their gardens. Oh, I think we all retain a bit of something where we were born and brought up with, and your background. It's rather funny in a way that whenever I talk to my parents, this should come out in the way that I still have a Dutch accent when speaking to them, not when I'm talking with my friends, my Australian friends. Yet it's quite noticeable when talking to Mum and Dad. And if I was ringing up from school, my friends would say, oh, I can tell who you're ringing up. This, I guess, is a subconscious connection still with your Dutch background. You feel perhaps that you should still be speaking Dutch, but you can't as well as you want to, so you'd speak Australian with a Dutch accent. I've found complete satisfaction and happiness here. I can't think what I would have had in Holland that I haven't got here. The family have been right behind me. I've had opportunities. Australians have had equal opportunities as Australians. Now I feel quite happy and at home here in Australia and part of it, very much. I love the Australian bush for its variety. I suppose we all feel this in a way, coming from a land where it's totally different, and it's more striking to us perhaps.
It's John Antill's corroboree. It's great excitement, this music. It brings great inner exciting feelings. And I listened to it quite a lot while I was thinking about the mural and when I was working on it, when I was actually working on it. Well, the design problem I was given was Holland, Australia. And it is a problem. It doesn't go together. They have nothing at all in common. So this was something that we had to work out and thought of it a lot, and sort of beat your brains out how you can bring the two together. And it occurred to me in the end that I could do the background, the tiles depicting scenes and the feel and the mood and the color of Holland, and over the top of this, the overlay, so to speak, represents Australia. And both of these, Holland, Australia, scenes, well, what have you, are both in nature, not man-made, no buildings or ships or anything like that, both in nature. The thing is to go up in Holland House, and Dutch people have saved up and done projects for years and years to get together enough money to build a club. And I was fortunate enough and very honored to be able to make this mural for them.
What were your thoughts when you came to Australia?
Well,
or before
I didn't
that?
want to come. I was terribly upset at coming because at 18 you don't want to change. You're just beginning to enjoy yourself and having a good time, and I had friends and went out and had a, I didn't want to change at all. But perhaps now I'm more fiercely Australian than a lot of Australians. I've really, apart from a very difficult start, not being able to talk to anyone, with your Dutch language, and I'm a chatterbox. But that was difficult, and then, but learning the language and making friends, the first 2 years were the very difficult ones. After that it became better and better and better, and I really love being here, and this is, just home.
You brought your pottery work with you. Did that give you some sense of continuance from the old life?
Yes. Pottery is the one continuing thing in my life. I've always done pottery, and I probably always will.
How about English and Dutch? Is there a sort of a friction inside you with the two languages, or have you gone?
No, none at all. Not anymore. Not at all. It's fairly difficult for me to speak Dutch. Continuing Dutch. I can speak Dutch in sections, but the English keeps creeping in all the time. But when I speak with a friend in Dutch all day, by the end of the day I'm quite good at it again. But I never do speak Dutch, not with my parents or brother and sister or anyone really.
Did you have any thoughts about marrying an Australian? Did that ever enter your head that you should perhaps marry a Dutchman?
No, never thought of it. You marry a person, not a nationality, don't you?
And about your children, do you think you'll be able to give them anything that's Dutch?
I'm not sure. This is perhaps the sad thing about it, because I don't really want to. It's not a matter of such a conscious thing. It is much more an unconscious thing. I don't think back about Holland a lot. When I had to do this mural, the Holland part that I had to bring out was tremendously difficult to even think what it looked like or what it felt like. It took quite a long time to dig around in the background of your mind, in the unconscious of your mind, to bring it out again. And in my day-to-day living and in my day-to-day sort of humdrum life that everyone has, Holland just isn't there anymore. Well, it is after all 23 years ago, and it's a long time.
So would you still pass any feeling to your children at all, or you
Well,
don't?
if I do, it is entirely unconscious. I'm not setting out to pass on anything Dutch to them. This is perhaps a pity, but it clashes too much, and I can't bring the two together in harmony. This may be a pity, and I fall down on the job there perhaps, but that's the way I am.
Why does it clash?
It's not compatible. The culture of Holland doesn't fit in to me.
So
I'm sure there are a lot of people who think this entirely different, because I know a lot of people who do bring in out of their home and to their children a lot of Holland. But I can't do it.
So you've actually consciously, physically almost become an Australian?
Yes, not consciously, it grew on me. I haven't, yes, I did. In the beginning I did set out to become an Australian. Because when you come to a new country, any new country, and you stay there to live the rest of your life, which we did. My mother always said there is no way back. We go and that's it. There's no way back. So that was the ultimate aim. We went, and that's what we all thought. That's it. So we did consciously set out to become Australians, and I think we did.
Daarbij die molen,
we brought those spoons with us, and the coffee pot, and some paintings, and the candle holders. They're just a few valuable things to us, because they're pretty old and from my mother's home, so that was very nice to have.
Did it give you a good feeling to have them with you?
Yes, it's always very nice, and yeah, we liked it, to have it around, something from past times.
Mrs. Breeden, I wonder what your reaction is to being called a migrant or a new Australian.
Well, I don't like it, not at all. New Australian is not too bad for the beginning, really, because when you arrive here, you really are new, isn't it? But once you're settled a bit and you really have fitted in, well, then you're not more new Australians than all the others, I reckon.
What about a migrant then?
Oh, that's terrible. That's even worse. And I think I can speak for everyone about that, because I don't think anyone likes that, to be called a migrant. Well, just like everybody else, we are Australian now. We are settled, we're naturalized, so we are Australians just like everybody else. Everybody else is a new Australian, isn't it? Every white man who's here.
I feel 100% Australian. Veerdinkemotie, they call it here, isn't it? Although we still have our thoughts in Holland now and again, because when we are on the coast, in Palm Beach, where we have a house, and we're leaving for Brisbane, we often say, well, let's pack in and go to Soest, which is the town we lived in Holland. Well, I started pottery when I was rather young, because having school friends whose parents were potters, painters, sculptors, but I felt more attracted to the potteries. And then the depression more or less started me to find another job, so I became a public servant for quite a while. Then when Kitty was old enough, she became an apprentice to one of the boys I was at school with, and she had her apprenticeship there. And shortly after that we decided to go to Australia, and we never thought to be potters here when we were in Holland, but Kitty started it off with a little 12 by 12 kiln on the front veranda, and when it became a bit too much for her, because it was doing very well, she decided that I had to come with her, otherwise it would be a bit too much for her. I then had to build a bigger kiln, because you need more production, of course, if the family has to live on it. More molds, all that, and well, from then on we became quite successful commercial potteries, made a lot of souvenir ware, which went all over Australia. We kept a map, and we pinned down the various places it went to. It went to as far as Tasmania, Hobart, Thursday Island, Woomera Ranges, Broome, Derby, Perth, everywhere. Now it is teaching full-time. There's very little time left if you have a school and you want to attend to it the way I do anyhow. I wouldn't say that it's good or not, but it needs all your time and all your attention, because I really like the students to go home with something worthwhile, not that they have to be ashamed of what they take home, but that they can really be proud of it. That is very stimulating for me, because they're very happy. It's very stimulating for them. Australia, I would say, is our home, but it's hard to say how you feel that. I think it is more a reflex, because I couldn't say that it was more home now than Australia is home. You still refer to it as home. And I don't think you ever get rid of that. If you migrate to another country, our age, well, that stays with you, because you've spent so much time that automatically it is more or less regarded as home.
Do you feel as if you've got sort of two allegiances in a way? Are you pulled two ways at any time?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I think if it came to the point, I would stick up for Australia. But there are times that you compare still, although if we went back, we would find it so completely different that we would say, oh, we start running back to forget about all that was over there.
Is there anything you think you miss in Holland?
Well, there I would say that home feeling might come in. If there's anything like that, it is more relaxed in your mind if you be Dutch than Australian. And that is mainly the language, I think, because there are quite a few occasions in pottery with the students at home that I can express myself better in Dutch still than in English. And that, of course, makes you feel more at ease when you can express and communicate better than in the strange language. But apart from that, I think it is 100% Australian.
It was here in the tambourine woodlands of eucalypts that I first became acquainted with the wildlife in the Australian bush. You might say this was the roots of my Australianness. And looking back on it, I'd say it was a very important beginning, because when I didn't so much get an impression of species like these, you know, what sort of gum is it? It's more that I got a flavour of the Australian bush. I got to know the smells and the sounds and the colours. And this first impression has actually stayed with me all the time. We've been in Australia for 21 years now. In those days, of course, the sights, the sounds, the brilliant colours of the Australian bush were completely foreign to me, completely new. But just as they were new, they were also completely captivating. The sounds of the honeyeaters, the flowers, the gum trees, the scent of the eucalypt, just as they are today. It could be the first day I was here, just exactly the same. But now I'm used to them. But in those early days, they were very important to the whole rest of my life, you might say, here, because they sort of built up a complete commitment to the Australian bush as we see it here. And from this early commitment, I began to read, look at books, and began gradually to get a deeper understanding of the bush, though by no means complete, and sort of have taken it from there. Well, the commitment is to the Australian bush. We're very wrapped up in it. The actual work we're doing is writing and photographing the wildlife that and Kay draws a lot for illustrations for our book and for other purposes. And this is basically and filming as well. So it's filming and photographing, writing, illustrating wildlife. Like I said, I've always been interested in looking for an outlet. Photography at first seemed to be my first go at it, and my first interest in trying to communicate in pictures what I felt about the bush. But in the long run, I found this to be inadequate. I couldn't really express what I wanted to put over just in pictures, so that's what made me turn to writing. And since then, you know, I can't say which I prefer. I like doing both, and I feel they both have a very important place in communicating what the bush means and what's in it.
The last 2 years we've spent a lot more time than we usually do in the bush. We usually spend about 3 months out and 3 months at home. I think the last 2 years we've spent probably 9 months of the year out in the bush and only a few months at home.
I think probably some people would say, oh, that's the ideal life. It must be a bit of a breeze. Is it, Kay?
Depends where you are. It gets pretty hot up north and cold down south, especially when you've got to be there in certain seasons to get certain birds and mammals. I think most people think all you do is go out bush and sit with your feet in a pool of water and everything comes to you, but It's not like that.
No, you've got to backpack all your equipment and everything for quite long distances, and you've got to drive into very, very tricky situations. And it's very hard work. Mind you, I'm not complaining about it. It's very enjoyable work at the same time, but nevertheless, it's, it's hard work.
And Stanley does the writing and I do the drawings, mostly at home. Very little drawing work out in the bush, only quick sketches that I'll use for poses, and most of the detail comes from photographs I take, because we haven't got time to stand there and draw it, so you've got to get on to the next place. So far the areas we've covered in the north of Queensland and down the east coast and Tasmania and across the top end of Australia in the Arnhem Land and the Kimberleys.
Stan, is there any sort of reason, do you think, that all the Breedens have married Australians?
Well, not really. I haven't ever sort of sat down and analysed it. We've sort of come to Australia, as my mother said, without any preconceived ideas. Ever since we've got here, we've enjoyed it very much, and we've sort of adopted the Australian way of life, and glad we have. And I suppose naturally with this comes that we communicate and associate with Australians, and from that we married Australians, of course. That's how it worked out, I think.
You would definitely consider yourself Australia?
Oh, most certainly, yes. I think in Australian terms. I always have an affection on the country of birth, of course, and sometimes you get very minor nostalgias and so on, but I completely think Australian. You particularly find this when you go overseas. I never think, we were recently in the United States, and you feel sort of hemmed in, and you feel you have to have some sort of identity, and my identity is definitely Australian and not Dutch.
Ik weet een heel klein plekje